me? Can we see it? Yeah, cool. So, hi everybody. So my name's Louise Robson. I'm an artist, a digital artist, and I'm also creative director at Wigan STEAM. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do in both of these roles, how I got there, and then we'll move on to the masterclass section where I'll show you how to create an interactive drawing with just a few lines of code in a piece of online software called P5JS. So just to give you a little bit about my background, I've always been creative, into art. So from a really young age, I always said I want to be an artist when I'm older. And at that point, I thought that meant painting and drawing because they were things that I really enjoyed. So I was really into art at primary school, high school, did it at GCSE, did it at A-level, and then I went and did an art foundation. And throughout all that time, my sort of art study was all sort of painting, drawing, that sort of thing. But on the other side of that, I was also really interested in computers, just in a sort of how can I create things. So I liked doing sort of like digital drawing, and I did sort of try and teach myself a little bit of coding when I was younger. I used to like making websites and things like that. But it was not something I ever studied throughout my entire education. So after I'd finished A-levels, I went and did an art foundation, and then I went to university. So I went to the University of Huddersfield, and I studied contemporary art there. And then I carried on and did a master's in contemporary art as well, and I graduated from that in 2016. So I've been sort of out in the real world, shall we say, for 4 years now. So I'll tell you a little bit about my artwork and then tell you a little bit about my work at Wigan STEAM. And then, like I say, we'll go on to the masterclass. So firstly, my artwork. So all looks very different to what I was saying about being interested in painting and drawing. But I'll tell you how I got into it a bit later on. So I'll just tell you about a few pieces that I've made that I use in digital tech. So this piece that you can see here was an installation that was part of a Museums at Night event a couple of years ago. This was actually in Wigan Museum, and obviously it was at night time. So I decided to use lots of coloured lights. And what I did was I programmed these lights to change colour depending on people being in the room with the installation. So as people walked through the space, depending on where they were in the room, the lights changed colour. And I also had some speakers that were playing sort of tones. So it was sort of like a piano sort of thing. So as you walked through the space, it sounded like you were walking along a piano, basically. And so this piece used the software that I'm going to show you how to use in a few minutes. It also used these electronics pieces, so light rings. It used a little computer microchip called an Arduino, and I also used an Xbox Kinect, which I'm thinking some of you might know about. It's sort of like a camera that can detect movement, and you can use it to play games on an Xbox. So this was a piece I produced as part of a residency that I did with Wigan Libraries, again, a couple of years ago. So this piece was kind of similar. So if you have a look on the screen there in the cage, you'll see an Xbox Kinect there as well. And what this piece did was it tracked movement of people around the library, and then it created a visualization based on that movement. So on the screen, we've got lots and lots of dots, and they basically appeared as people walked around the library. So you might be able to tell what this is. This is actually people walking up and down a staircase. So this was taken over about 5 hours, and you can see the build-up of people moving around the room. And I had 5 different screens around the library that were all connected to a computer, and they all had their own piece of code running a program, and they were all networked up as well. That's the most complex piece I've ever created, but I taught myself how to do everything completely, so it was really rewarding in the end. And this is the last piece I'm going to show you. So this is the most recent piece I created, and this is a data visualization. So this was in the Gallery Shopping Centre in Wigan Town Centre last year. And this piece is based on visitor numbers to the shopping centre. So I got hold of the data that the shopping centre had about how many people had been to the shopping centre over the last, I think it was about 20 years since it had opened. Basically what I did was created this visualization based on that data. So we've got lots of dots around there. It's sort of an abstracty piece. You're not supposed to actually know what any of it means. But what happened was this sort of shrunk over time, because obviously people are going into shopping centres less and less at the moment. So move on to talk about what I do at Wigan STEAM. So I'm hoping, I think I saw in the chat before that some people have been to Wigan STEAM. So I'm hoping there are a few of you out there that have been in and taken part in a workshop with us, or something else. So at Wigan STEAM, my role is very much about working with people. So it is a bit of a contrast in terms of what I do with my artwork side of things. So I deliver workshops where I teach people how to code, and it's not complicated. It's more like an introduction to get people into sort of teaching themselves how to code, basically. I do a lot of digital art workshops, so things like drawing on tablets, creating little electronics pieces with microbits, that sort of thing, and basically encouraging people to get creative with technology. So my role is very much about getting people into using digital tech and encouraging them to use it in a creative way, basically. So a few more pictures. So we do things like stop motion animation on tablets, green screen workshops. This was a project we did with microbits called Curiosity Boxes. So we had lots of people making these creative, they were basically just random boxes that had like lights in them, or they made noises, or they had like moving parts. That was really fun as well. So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. That's basically what I do on a day-to-day basis. A bit of artwork, a bit of sort of delivering workshops, that sort of thing. So when you think about what I started doing at university and what I'm doing now, there was a moment where things sort of changed for me, and I call that my light bulb moment, because basically what happened was I was sat in my studio at university. I think it's my second year of uni, and it was one of our like days off, so there weren't many people about, and a technician from another department just knocked on the door and said to me, "Oh, I'm doing this workshop, do you want to come and have a go?" And I was like, no, I'm busy, I don't want to have a go, I can't be bothered, sort of thing. And basically he persuaded me to go along because he'd only had like 3 people go, and there were about 20 people meant to be there, so he wanted some more people to go and join in with it. So I went along to it, and I'm so glad that I did. Basically what he showed us to do in that workshop was to use a little microcontroller, so basically a little computer called an Arduino, and that's what you can see in these pictures here. And what he showed us to do was how to create this little circuit, so a few wires, one little LED light bulb, and a little light sensor. And what happened was when you put your finger over the light sensor, so the sensor couldn't sense any light anymore, the light lit up. And the most interesting part of that workshop to me was how he showed us how to do that with just a few lines of code on a computer. And that moment, it was basically an hour-long workshop, completely changed things for me, because it showed me how I could go from being a consumer of digital technology to actually creating with it. And so from that point, that's when I started to make artwork with technology. I started teaching myself how to code, and I just realized how powerful all of these devices that we have can be. You know, so even mobile phones, like I've done things with mobile phones before, as well, by coding little apps and things like that. And I just became really interested in digital tech. So it was from that point onwards I started making artwork that was digital. And I knew that what I wanted to do when I left university was in that sort of area, and I'm really lucky that that's what I do now. And within my job at Wigan STEAM especially, I'm really interested in just giving other people that light bulb moment as well, because it can literally be just something so small that can just change things for you completely. Yeah, so that's that. So I'll move on to the masterclass in a second. So what's really important to remember when I'm doing all of this is that I taught myself everything I know when it comes to digital tech. The only time someone's taught me how to do something is when I went to that first workshop. Other than that, everything I've done, I've figured out myself. And, you know, it's sort of like there's not always a right way of doing things. You just sort of figure things out, try new things, don't be afraid to get it wrong. And that's how I've got where I am now. So this is where I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of something. So again, before I go into this, it's really important to remember that I'm doing a demonstration of this software. I'm not expecting you to remember everything. Afterwards, you will get sent like a little resource sheet that will give you links to the websites you need to go on to help you have a little go if you're interested in it. So at this point, it's just about me showing you what this tool can do. So just have a watch at this point, and then you'll get resources afterwards. So I'm going to show you a tool, an online tool called P5JS, and it's the thing I use to make all of my artworks. And it's very similar to the thing that I was shown in that first workshop that I did. And it's a JavaScript library. So some of you, if you've done like computer science lessons or anything in ICT, maybe, you might have heard of JavaScript, but it doesn't matter if you don't know what it is. So it's for creative coding, with a focus on making coding accessible and inclusive for artists, designers, educators, beginners, and anybody else who wants to have a go. And it's primarily visual. So when I show you it in a minute, you'll see that you write code and the outcome is a visual outcome. So you can instantly see what your code has done, and you get that instant feedback. So it's really good for beginners who've never done any coding before, because you can sort of see it happening in front of your eyes. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick examples of other things that people have done with it, just so that you can get a bit of an idea of the breadth of things that you can do with it. So this is an artist called Casey Reyes. He creates something called generative art, and that's why code is really good for his artwork. So basically he'll write a piece of code that will be the same code every time, but the outcome will always be different, because he'll use like random numbers and things like that to create these sort of interesting patterns and things like that. So he creates like these installations and large scale artwork. This guy's called Aaron Coblin. So he does all sorts of stuff with P5JS, but this is one of the most interesting. So this is a data visualization, and he's taken data from flight paths across the USA, and he's created these really interesting images with that data. You can do graphic design with it. So this is from the MIT Media Lab. So what they did here was they sort of set, we want these 3 colors, we want these shapes, and then each department actually got a different logo based on the same rules that they set out in P5JS. So it sort of generated all of these different logos. And this is an interesting one. So this is a fashion design company. So they produced a program in P5JS where you would create a pattern over a model using your mouse, and it would sort of generate all these little triangles and things. And what it would do then was take it and generate an actual pattern that you could then cut out and turn into a dress. So that's quite an interesting one. And then the final one, so this is an interesting one as well. This is a 3D design one. So you can create 3D models in it as well, that can then go on and be 3D printed. So yes, there's all sorts of stuff that can be done with it, from like interactive art. You can create games in it. You can use it on websites. You can create animation, art installation. You can do things with electronics as well. So hopefully that's giving you an idea of the huge amount of things that can be done with this software. So I'll take you into the home page. So first thing I will do is take you to the home page. So it's just p5js.org. So it's all just in your browser. So one of the best parts about it is that it's completely free. All you need is a web browser. So you can even do it on tablets as well, or even your mobile phones actually. So you don't even have to have a computer screen to be able to do it. So P5JS is a text-based language, which means you type letters and symbols into a coding environment. So if you're familiar with Python, I'm presuming some of you probably will be, it's kind of similar to that. If you've done Scratch before, but you've not done anything else, this is a really good next step because it's quite digestible. If you've not done either, it doesn't matter. It's a really good taste. This is a really good taster for getting into coding as well. Like I said, this is one of the first things I did when I started teaching myself to code, and I still use it now. I really like it. So it's important to remember as well that most people who use it don't use it because they're developers or coders. So most people who are using this software, they're not actually in a sort of traditional techie sort of role. So like, for example, me, like I have studied art through and through, and although my job does involve digital and tech, that's not all my job is. So it is important to remember that most people who are using this software have taught it themselves. They've learned things through looking at online resources, watching videos on YouTube about it and things like that. So yeah, so I will show you the homepage. So this is the homepage, so p5js.org, and there's all sorts of information here. I'll show you a little bit about the other pages that we can go on later on, but I'm just going to go straight through to the editor at the moment. So I'm just going to click on here, start creating, and that's going to take me through to the environment. Oops. Okay, so this is where you basically do all of your coding, and it's where your outputs will appear as well. So you've got your area where you write your code here. So you've already got a little bit of code in there, which I'll talk about in a minute. So that's where you'll type everything. And then you've got your console down here. So this little section here is where you'll get any error messages, or you might get tips and things like that that will help you figure out if you've missed a letter out in your code and things like that. And then over here in your preview section, this is where your outcome will actually appear. So if you draw a circle, for example, that's where that circle will appear. The last couple of things that you need to know, so you've got your plus and your play and your stop buttons here as well. So I think that's fairly self-explanatory. So you press play to get your code to do what you want it to do, and you press stop to stop it. There's a little tick box here, so it's called auto refresh. So if you tick that, that means that anything you type in your code, if it's going to create something visual, it will automatically make it happen, so you don't then have to press play. But I normally like to have that off and press play and watch it happen when I've finished writing the code rather than live. So you've got some code already in the little box here. So what you've got are two separate sections. So you've got your function setup. So if you see there, it says function setup, and then you've got a curly bracket there and a curly bracket here. So you want to view that as one, like the first section. And then look at this second piece here. So you've got function draw, and then you've got a curly bracket there and a curly bracket there as well. So I'll explain what they mean. So you've got your setup section here. So your setup section is what it says on the tin. It's for setting up your code. So in there you put things like, I want to create a canvas that is this big. If you want to set a background color, you'd say, I want to set my background color for this color, and anything else you might want to do in there. But I'll go into that in a little bit. But what's most important to remember is your setup function runs just once at the start. So when you press play, anything you've got in your setup section will happen once. And then moving on to the draw section, anything that's in the draw section will happen over and over and over again. So it loops continuously forever until you press stop. So what happens when you press play, anything that you've got in your setup section here will happen. And then anything you've got in your draw section will just happen over and over and over and over and over again until you press the stop button. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a canvas. So what you want to sort of imagine that P5 is like at this point, what I'm going to sort of show you how to do is create a really simple drawing made up of different shapes. So there'll be circles, triangles, squares, lines, dots, things like that. So you can sort of imagine it to be a little bit like Microsoft Paint or Photoshop. So what we're going to do is create a coloured background. We're going to put some shapes on top of it, and then we're going to actually add a little bit of interaction with our mouse as well at the end. So the first thing we need to do is tell the software that we want to create a canvas that we're going to draw on. So we've got this command here that's called create canvas. Also, don't worry about the way things are typed. I'll show you how to get that syntax, which is basically the way that things are typed in the combination that things are typed in. I'll show you how to get that later on as well. I'm not expecting you to remember any of this. So you've got create canvas, and then we've got some brackets here, and there's two numbers in there. So those numbers are in pixels. So I'm hoping most of you know this, but all images on screens are made up of pixels, and there are just like tiny dots one after the other. So what we've got here is it's going to create a square that's 400 pixels by 400 pixels, and that will be our canvas ready. So if I press play now, you might have noticed this before, a grey square pops up that is 400 by 400 pixels. So if I then go into this and change that to 600 by 600, and then press stop and then play again, you'll notice that it's got bigger. So that's our canvas set up now. So the next thing I'm going to do is set a background color. So what I'm going to do for this one is just copy and paste that into there. So at the moment, that number that's in the background command, that correlates to this color. So that is actually setting the canvas background to grey. what I'm going to do is make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to search colour picker. And what that's done is it's brought up a colour picker. So you've not even got to go on a website. It will just bring up a colour picker right on your screen there. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at these values here. So there are lots of different ways that colour can be set to different things in using computers. So you might have heard of hex codes if you've done things with like building websites before. We're going to use RGB values. So that's the ones that are in this box here. So I'm just going to find a nice colour. What should we have? Go for something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste those 3 numbers. I'm going to go back to my editor and I'm going to copy and paste those into there. And then what I'm going to do is stop and play. And there we go. That's set my background to my nice pink colour that I picked out. So we'll use that all the way throughout to change the colour of the other things that we're going to be drawing as well. So, like I said, I'll show you a little bit about how to get the syntax in a couple of minutes. But first of all, I'll just show you how this console works. So, like I said, down here in this grey box in the console, we'll have any error messages that might come up. So if I just go and delete these 2 little symbols here, can you see we've got some red lines that have popped up? So that's telling me there's something not quite right. Then if I try and play it again, it's telling me I've got a missing bracket. So if I just put a bracket there and then play it again, it's happy again. So if there are things missing when you're having a little go with it, usually it will tell you, and it's quite easy to work it out. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a circle on the screen. So what I will do, let me get another. So what we're going to start doing now is we're going to start using the reference page. So on the home page, if you go down to reference here, click on that. This page is basically your sort of cheat sheet to use in P5.js. So there's lots and lots of different sections, and some of them I have never touched. So it can look a bit complicated when you first go on this page. What I've done is in your resource sheet that you'll get at the end, I've listed the sections of this that are going to be useful to you. So hopefully it won't seem like too much when you come to this page. So the main section on this page that I'm going to use at the moment is the shape section. So if I just click on shape, what we've got here is a little list of the different shapes that we can draw really easily, basically. So I'm going to draw a circle. So if I click on circle, and then this page comes up. So this page tells me about that piece of code, basically. So it's telling me it draws a circle. And what else it tells you as well is about these 3 numbers here. So those 3 numbers are going to tell the program where I want to draw my circle and how big I want to draw it. So if we go down here, we've got circle, and then it's got X, Y, D, and those letters correspond to these letters here, and that's going to tell us what we need to do with that letter. So what number do we need to put there for it to draw where I want it to draw. So X is the X coordinate of the center of the circle, Y is the Y coordinate of the center of the circle. So X is how far across the screen. So hopefully you've done this in maths. So X, you've got 0, 0 at your top left hand corner. So if I just go back here, so 0, 0 will be up here, and then any X value is going across your screen, and then any Y value is going down. So say I've got 600, 600 here, and I want to draw it in the middle. I draw it at 300 and then 300 down as well. And then you've got D, and that's the diameter of the circle. So that's how big you want to draw your circle as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and paste that little bit of code. That's the really good thing about this reference as well, is that you can just copy and paste the code out of this reference. You don't even have to type it yourself. You can just copy and paste it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in the draw section. So we want that to draw after the background has been set and after we've set the canvas size. So I've got that there. And then if I try and press play, it's not going to draw it at this point because I've not put any numbers in. So it's telling me X isn't defined, which is that X here. And then it will, and then if I put a number in X, but there's still not one in Y and D, it'll tell me. So I'm going to change that. So I'm going to put that in the middle. So 300, 300, and then I'll do it, what should I do it across? 100. And then if I press play, there we go. We've got a circle. So in just that one line of code, I've drawn a circle, basically. So let's have a little look at some others. So I'm going to just quickly go through some of the other shapes and draw those as well. So if I go back now, let's draw, what should we draw? We'll draw a line. And we'll do, where should we do a line from? We'll do 100. So we'll do a diagonal line across the middle of the screen. What else shall we do? Let's do a triangle. So I'm just putting some completely random numbers in now. So that's the fun thing about this as well. When you're just trying things out, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. The main thing is to just have a go and see what happens when you do it. So I've got my triangle there. What else shall we do? A square. What number should we put in there? Square. A little square. We'll do another circle. And then last one, we'll do some points. So points are just little dots, basically. Where should we do some of those? So you might not see these straight away because they're tiny little dots, but we'll get them. So we've got a little one there. We've got, should we do another one? another one there. There we go. So what I've got there now are lots of shapes, basically. Like I said, every shape, when you click on it, it will give you instructions about how to draw it, basically. So, like for example, here, you can copy and paste that, and that will tell you, and you will then be able to put numbers in the place of X and Y, and it will it'll draw a point for you. So so another thing to be aware of is that you draw this in, it's kind of done in layers. So if you use Photoshop or like Illustrator and things like that before, anything that you draw first will be underneath anything that you draw after it. So for example, you can see here I've got a circle, but then a line's been drawn over the top of it here, but then I drew another circle after it, so the line is underneath that circle. So if I just take this circle here, copy and paste that underneath the line, you'll then see the line is then drawn first and the circles are drawn over the top of it. So you can change colours of things as well. So if I go back on the reference page and I go to this colour section, and the only ones we really care about at the moment are background, fill, stroke. So we'll go on fill and we will fill some of our shapes in. So again, it's done in layers. So any shape that you want to be filled in a colour, you need to put fill before it. So let me, if I just copy, I'll just copy and paste this one from here. So I've decided I want to set the triangle to this yellowy colour. So if I press stop and then play. Okay, so what you've got there is all of the shapes have gone yellow, and that's because we've not currently got any other fill before these other shapes here. So what it's done is it's just filled them all in that same colour, because it basically thinks anything after that we want to fill in yellow. So if I then take that, and I'm just going to put completely random numbers in here to save time, but you can use the colour picker. So let's put 75 in there, see what colour that turns out. I wonder if that's going to be a nice one. So we've got some green now. Let's change that to something. And then we'll make this circle another colour. Okay, there we go. So we've got our shapes filled in some nice colours. So the last thing I will show you is your stroke here. So stroke basically sets the outline so it sets the outline colour, and then you can set the weight of the outline as well. So you can make the outline a bit thicker. So if I copy and paste this stroke weight 4, and I'll put that above the line, this is going to set everything to a stroke weight of 4. But then I can copy and paste that and change that to maybe 15. So we're going to get some really thick outlines. But all you need to remember is that it's done in layers. So if you imagine every every section that you've got a shape in has its own little sort of section. And usually I just separate them with a gap like that, just so it's nice and clear in my head. Let's set this one to 4. And the last one we'll set these points. So the points, you can only set the stroke weight and the colour, so that they're not a shape, they're just a dot. So we want to set that to something bigger so that you can see that. There we go. Let's change that. It's a bit too much. There we go. Cool. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of how to create a drawing and format it, change colours. Like I said, in your resource sheet that you'll get hold of, you'll have a little pointer to the sections in the reference that are useful. So the last little thing I'm going to show you, which is where it gets really fun and you start to sort of feel like what you're creating is interactive, is what I'm going to show you is the mouse interaction. So if I go on, it's an environment. Mouse exit in events. So in this section, this is where you can use things like your keyboard interaction. You can use mouse interaction, so like pressing down on your mouse buttons, moving your mouse to add interaction to your drawings. This is a really, really easy way of adding some interaction. So there are two phrases that you can use. So there's mouse X and mouse Y. And what happens is these are called variables. So a variable is basically a value that can change. So where in here, for example, where I put my triangle, all of these values are fixed values because I've just typed in the number. But if I type a word in its place, that word can store a number that can change over time. And in this case, it's going to change based on where my mouse is on the screen. So my mouse has an X value and it has a Y value because it moves across and down on my screen. So what we can do is use mouse X's value and the mouse's Y's value to set the position of things on our screen as well. So I'm just going to take this first circle here, and where the X value would have been, so if you look in your reference and find out where the X should have been, so the X always comes first anyway. If I type mouse X in there and then I stop and play, can you see there, that's then moving. And then if I type mouse Y in there, the circle then follows my mouse completely, and it's underneath a lot of my drawing. So then what I can do as well is add my background into here. And then that will delete, that will sort of cover every frame. So then I won't get that trail behind me. So you've got that there. And then on the triangle one, what should I do? If I put mouse X. So it's really fun, this part as well, because what you can basically do is just put mouse X and mouse Y in completely random places and something fun will happen. So I can even do things like, let's change the size of this circle. There we go. So if I put that back, I can't remember what that was on now. So if I then, let's get rid of that for a second. get rid of my triangle. So I've got my little circle here, and then maybe the I'm just changing some values on my points as well. So they're changing based on my mouse. So this is a really good concept as well for, like, if you were interested in creating games, for example, and you wanted something to follow your mouse around, then that's basically the very beginnings of that. You can do things like create, you know, like the sort of Pong game where you've got your little paddle and the balls flying it. You can use this exact thing to create the little paddle that moves up and down, and that's basically the starting concept of it. So let me get back to my presentation. So hopefully that's given you a nice introduction to a little tool that I use. Don't let yourself sort of get intimidated by it. I basically figured out how to use it by copying and pasting things from the reference. On the website as well, there are lots and lots of tutorials, and there's basically a walkthrough of what I've just done, just demonstrated, on the website as well. So you can go on there, follow a tutorial, and basically achieve the same thing that I've just shown you. So that might be useful if you want to have a little go yourselves. There's also some really nice YouTube channels where people can show you how to use it, and you can sort of code along with them. So I've given you a link to those as well on your resource sheet that you'll be getting. So we've got a little challenge for you to get you having a little go on P5JS. So there will be a couple of prizes. So there's going to be 2 microbits up for grabs. So if you fancy having a go, then now's your moment to have a try. So your challenge is basically going to be to create a program on P5JS like I've just done. I want it to include at least 2 shapes, so it could be a triangle and a circle, or, you know, whatever other combination you want to do. 1 line and 1 point. All shapes, lines and points should be styled using the stroke and fill commands. So basically just do what I've just done. Set the color of the stroke, set the fill of the shapes, and you could set the stroke weight as well, and then add some mouse interaction in some way. So again, just add mouse X and mouse Y into the shapes, like where you normally put the numbers, and some interaction will happen. And then just get your entries into your teachers. So we'll figure out